My name is Christiana Wilkins, and at 68 years old, I never imagined I would be homeless by choice. After my husband Thomas passed, moving in with my son Jacob and his wife Amanda seemed like the perfect solution. I used my retirement savings to help them buy their dream homes, secretly paying their mortgage each month. But last Sunday, over our usual family dinner, Amanda casually mentioned I don't contribute enough to justify staying with them. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're from, and subscribe to hear what happened next when I decided enough was enough. I spent 42 wonderful years teaching third graders at Lakeside Elementary before retiring. My students kept me young at heart, and my husband Thomas and I had planned to travel the world once I joined him in retirement. He had retired 2 years earlier from his accounting job and was eagerly researching destinations. We had even purchased a beautiful map where we would place pins on all the places we wanted to visit. But life rarely goes according to plan. 3 months after my retirement party, Thomas was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors gave him 6 months. He lasted 4. Those final months were filled with hospital visits, medication schedules, and whispered promises that I would be okay without him. How could I be, though? We had been together since college. I had never lived alone. Our son Jacob was my rock during those dark days. He would drive 2 hours every weekend to visit, help with housework, and take me to Thomas's doctor appointments. Jacob was always the sensitive one, more like his father than me. At 38, he had established himself in marketing, though he never seemed to find his financial footing. Despite a good salary, he always lived paycheck to paycheck, something Thomas and I could never understand. Jacob met Amanda at a work conference 7 years ago. She was 35 now, ambitious, and driven in her human resources career. From the beginning, there was something about her that made me uneasy, though I tried my best to connect with her. She was polite but distant, always evaluating, judging. Thomas would squeeze my hand when she would make subtle comments about our outdated home or my quaint teaching career. After Thomas passed, the big house felt impossibly empty. Each room held memories that brought both comfort and pain. Jacob started suggesting I sell the house and move in with them. Their apartment was too small, he said, but they had been saving for a house. With property values rising in their area, they needed help with the down payment. "Mom, it would be perfect," Jacob insisted during one of his visits. "You could help us get into a bigger place and you wouldn't have to be alone." I was vulnerable, grieving, and the thought of being near my only child and his family was appealing. Their daughter Lucy was 6. A bright spark of joy in my life. The chance to see her grow up daily instead of through occasional visits was irresistible. I sold our family home for $400,000. It hurt to watch strangers walk through rooms where Thomas and I had built our life, but I convinced myself it was the right decision. I gave Jacob and Amanda $250,000 for the down payment on a $750,000 house in a good school district. It was more than they asked for, but I wanted them to have a comfortable home with space for everyone. What Jacob and Amanda never knew was that I also arranged with the bank to make the monthly mortgage payments. $3,200 every month automatically withdrawn from my account. Thomas had left me well provided for with life insurance and our retirement savings, and I wanted to secure Jacob's future. He had struggled so much with finances, and I thought this would give them stability without hurting his pride. The house they purchased was beautiful. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a backyard with a swing set for Lucy, and a sunny kitchen where I could bake cookies with my granddaughter. My bedroom was on the first floor, giving me some privacy while being close enough to be part of daily family life. At first, everything seemed perfect. I cooked dinner most nights, cleaned while they were at work, and spent precious hours with Lucy after school. I taught her to read just as I had taught countless children over my career. Watching her sound out words, her little face scrunched in concentration, brought me immeasurable joy. But small comments from Amanda started about 3 months after I moved in. Nothing overtly rude, just subtle digs that left me feeling slightly off balance. "Christiana, we usually use the other cutting board for vegetables," she would say, or, "We try not to use so much butter in our cooking." I adjusted, trying to follow the unwritten rules of their household. I learned that Amanda preferred the towels folded in thirds, not halves. That shoes belonged on the rack by the door, not beside it. That Lucy should only have dessert on weekends, though Amanda would often break this rule herself. Jacob noticed the tension but avoided addressing it directly. When I tried to talk to him about it, he would shrug and say, "That's just how Amanda is. She likes things a certain way." My old friend Dorothy, who I had taught with for decades, saw through my cheerful phone updates. "Christiana," she said, during one of our weekly calls, "you don't sound like yourself. What's really going on in that house?" I brushed off her concerns, just adjusting to living with family after being on my own. "It's fine, really." But it wasn't fine. Amanda began complaining about my television watching in the evening, claiming it disturbed their sleep, though their bedroom was upstairs and I kept the volume low. She commented on how much space my belongings took up, though I had donated most of my furniture and kept only personal items. "Mom, Amanda doesn't mean it that way," Jacob would say after particularly tense interactions. "She's just stressed about work." I started spending more time in my room, coming out only to cook, clean, or spend time with Lucy. I became hyper-aware of my presence in their home, trying to be smaller, quieter, less intrusive, all while paying for the roof over our heads. Dorothy saw the changes in me during our occasional lunch dates. "You've lost weight," she observed. "And you never mention going out or doing things you enjoy anymore." "I'm just being considerate," I told her. "It's their home after all." "Is it?" Dorothy raised an eyebrow. "Seems to me you paid for a good chunk of it." I never told her about the mortgage payments. That was my secret, my way of helping without making Jacob feel inadequate. But as Amanda's behavior worsened, I began to wonder if my silence was a mistake. By the 6-month mark of living together, Amanda had dropped all pretense of warmth. Her smiles became rare, reserved only for Jacob and Lucy, or when company came over. Even then, I noticed how she would introduce me to their friends. "This is Christiana, Jacob's mom," she would say, then add with a meaningful glance, "She's staying with us for now." For now, as if my presence had an expiration date no one had told me about. The incident with Thomas's watch was when I first realized how bad things had become. My husband had worn that watch every day of our married life. It wasn't expensive, just a simple Timex, with a brown leather band that had been replaced countless times. But it had been on his wrist when he proposed when Jacob was born, when we renewed our vows on our 40th anniversary. After he died, I kept it on my dresser, sometimes holding it to my cheek, imagining I could still feel his warmth. One Tuesday morning, I noticed it was missing. I searched my room frantically, thinking perhaps I had moved it without remembering. When I couldn't find it, I reluctantly approached Amanda, who was working from home that day. "Amanda, have you seen Thomas's watch? It was on my dresser, but now I can't find it." She barely looked up from her laptop. "I tidied up your room yesterday while you were at the grocery store. I probably moved it somewhere safer." The invasion of privacy stunned me. "You went through my things." "I was dusting," she said dismissively. "The house needs to be clean for Lucy's sake. Dust triggers her allergies." Lucy had no allergies that I knew of, but I bit my tongue. "Could you please help me find the watch? It's very important to me." Amanda sighed dramatically, as if I was being unreasonable. "I'll look when I finish this report." 3 days passed before I found the watch myself, buried in a box in the garage labeled "yard sale." When I confronted Amanda, her eyes widened in mock surprise. "How did that get in there?" "It must have been an accident when I was organizing. You know how it is, Christiana, at your age it's hard to keep track of things." I was 68, not 98. My mind was sharp as ever, and we both knew the watch hadn't ended up in that box by accident. But I said nothing, simply retreated to my room with Thomas's watch clutched tightly in my hand. After that, I started noticing other small items disappearing, only to reappear in strange places. My reading glasses in the junk drawer, a framed photo of Thomas and me placed face down in a bookshelf. My favorite cardigan suddenly with a mysterious tear. Meanwhile, Lucy had grown increasingly attached to me. She would rush home from school, calling Grandma before the door even closed behind her. I helped her with homework, read her stories with different voices for each character, and taught her card games Thomas had taught Jacob. These precious moments with my granddaughter became the bright spots in increasingly dark days. Amanda noticed Lucy's attachment and didn't like it. She began scheduling playdates and activities that kept Lucy away from home until dinner time. When Lucy protested wanting to spend time with me, Amanda would say things like, "Grandma is tired, honey. Old people need lots of rest." Jacob was rarely home to witness any of this. He started working longer hours, taking on additional projects that kept him at the office until late in the evening. When he was home, he seemed distracted, tense, constantly checking his phone. The warm, sensitive son who had comforted me after Thomas's death seemed to be disappearing, replaced by a man who walked on eggshells in his own home. The real escalation came during a neighborhood barbecue. I was helping arrange food on the patio table when I overheard Amanda talking to her friend Bethany by the grill. "Living with an old lady isn't what I signed up for," she was saying, unaware I could hear. "She's always there watching everything we do. Jacob doesn't see how weird it is." "But doesn't she help with Lucy?" Bethany asked. Amanda snorted. "She spoils her rotten. Sneaks her treats when I've said no, lets her stay up reading when she should be sleeping, and the space she takes up with all her old person stuff, plus the extra water, electricity, food. It's like having another child, except this one doesn't grow up and leave." I set down the bowl of potato salad with shaking hands and walked away before they could see me. That night, I started looking at apartment listings on my tablet, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake moving in with them. The next morning, I went to the grocery store and paid for everything with my own credit card. I bought cleaning supplies, paper goods, Lucy's favorite snacks, and even wine Amanda had mentioned wanting to try. $600 worth of household items, hoping to silently address her complaints about my financial burden. I did this weekly for the next month, in addition to the mortgage payments. I also started paying for pizza nights, new towels for the bathrooms, and Lucy's new school shoes. None of it seemed to make a difference. Amanda's comments about expenses continued, now focused on how much electricity I used, or how long my showers were. One afternoon, I came home early from lunch with Dorothy to find Amanda in my room looking through my desk drawer where I kept financial statements. "What are you doing?" I asked from the doorway, startling her. "Oh, I was looking for stamps," she said quickly, closing the drawer. "Jacob needed to mail something." The stamps were in the kitchen drawer where they had always been. We both knew it. "Next time, please ask before coming into my room," I said, my teacher voice returning for the first time in years. Amanda's eyes narrowed. "This is our house, Christiana. All the rooms are our rooms." I wanted to scream that I paid the mortgage, that without me they wouldn't even have this house, but I swallowed the words. Jacob didn't know about my arrangement with the bank, and telling Amanda would only make things worse. Instead, I started keeping my financial statements in my purse, which I took with me everywhere. Dorothy became increasingly concerned about my situation. "Chris, this isn't healthy," she said during one of our lunch dates. "You're walking around on eggshells in a house you helped pay for." "What choice do I have?" I asked her. "Where would I go?" "Anywhere would be better than staying where you're not appreciated," she insisted. "Stand up for yourself. You taught hundreds of children to be confident and speak their truth. Time to take your own advice." I knew she was right, but the thought of confrontation, of potentially losing access to Lucy and Jacob, kept me silent. I kept hoping things would improve, that Amanda would soften, that Jacob would notice what was happening and intervene. I was wrong on all counts. Sunday dinners were a tradition I had started, preparing special meals the way my mother had when I was growing up. Despite the tension in the house, everyone still gathered at the table at 6 o'clock. I made pot roast that particular Sunday, with roasted potatoes and carrots, homemade rolls, and apple pie for dessert. Thomas's favorite meal. Lucy had spent the afternoon with me drawing pictures while I cooked. She proudly showed me her latest creation, a colorful rendering of our house. "Look, Grandma, I drew all of us. There's Daddy and Mommy and me and you," she pointed to each stick figure with a chubby finger. "And this is your room right here. I made sure to draw your special blanket and Grandpa's picture." "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I told her, genuinely touched that she had included my space as an integral part of their home. Amanda walked in as Lucy was explaining her drawing. Her lips tightened as she glanced at the picture. "Lucy, go wash up for dinner," she said abruptly. "But I want to show Daddy my picture when he gets home." Now Lucy. After Lucy trudged upstairs, Amanda took the drawing and placed it on the counter face down. She needs to focus more on her actual homework than these doodles, she said. Jacob arrived home just as I was taking the rolls out of the oven. He seemed in good spirits, kissing Lucy on the head and even giving me a quick hug. "Something smells amazing, Mom," he said, loosening his tie. He gave Amanda a peck on the cheek, which she barely acknowledged. Once we were all seated, Jacob shared his exciting news. The Anderson account went through. If all goes well, I might be up for promotion to senior manager by year end. "That's wonderful," I exclaimed, genuinely happy for him. Jacob had worked hard, and recognition was long overdue. "We could use the extra money," Amanda said, spearing a carrot with her fork. "Expenses have been piling up lately." I saw an opening to address her concerns. "I noticed the water bill on the counter. I'd be happy to contribute to that in addition to the groceries I've been buying." Amanda set down her fork. "Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Christiana. Jacob and I have been discussing our household budget. Things are tight and we need to make some changes." Jacob suddenly became very interested in cutting his pot roast into smaller and smaller pieces. "We need to discuss your living situation." Amanda continued, her voice calm and measured as if she was conducting a performance review at work. "You don't contribute enough to justify the space you take up." The dining room fell silent. Lucy looked up, sensing the tension but not understanding it. Jacob kept his eyes on his plate. "I buy groceries every week," I said quietly. "And household supplies." Amanda waved her hand dismissively. "A few bags of groceries don't offset the increased costs of having another person in the house full time. The extra electricity you use watching TV all day. The hot water for your long showers. The space your things take up that we could use for storage or a home office." Each word was a slap. I hadn't realized she had been keeping such a detailed account of my perceived costs. Jacob finally spoke, his voice weak. "Mom helps out in other ways, with Lucy and cooking. Babysitters cost $15 an hour, Jacob. Even if we credited her for 10 hours a week with Lucy, that's $600 a month. Her share of utilities, food, and space usage would be at least twice that." They had calculated my worth down to the dollar, assigned a monetary value to time spent with my granddaughter. I sat there, fork suspended midair, food forgotten. "You might be happier in a senior community," Amanda suggested, as if offering a solution to a problem I hadn't known existed. "There are some nice ones in the area. People your own age activities. No stairs to worry about as you get older." "Mom's only 68, Jacob protested weakly. "She doesn't need a retirement home." "I'm not saying right now," Amanda clarified. "But we should start looking. Waiting lists can be long for the good ones." I set down my utensils carefully, my appetite gone. "If you'll excuse me," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'm not feeling well." "Grandma, aren't you going to have pie?" Lucy asked, her little face concerned. "Not tonight, sweetheart. Grandma needs to rest." I retreated to my room, closing the door quietly behind me. Only then did I allow the tears to come, muffling my sobs with a pillow so Lucy wouldn't hear. I cried for the loss of my dignity, for Jacob's failure to defend me, for the realization that I had never truly been welcome in this home I helped create. Through the wall, I could hear their muffled conversation continuing without me. Amanda's voice rose occasionally, while Jacob's responses were too quiet to make out. Lucy asked a question that was hushed immediately. That night, I pulled out Thomas's picture from my nightstand. "What would you do?" I whispered to his smiling face. We had been partners, making all major decisions together. Without him, I felt adrift. I barely slept, going over options in my mind. I could confront them, tell them about the mortgage payments, force them to acknowledge my contributions. But then, what? Live in a house where I was clearly unwanted, creating more tension for all of us, including Lucy. Early the next morning, before anyone else was awake, I slipped out to make coffee and heard voices in the kitchen. Jacob and Amanda were already up, speaking in hushed tones. I paused in the hallway just out of sight. "The Sunrise Senior Living has a 2-bedroom unit available next month," Amanda was saying. We should take her to see it this weekend. Don't you think this is rushing things? Jacob asked. Mom seems happy here. Jacob, we've talked about this. We need the space, especially if we have another baby. Your mother will adjust. These places are like resorts now with activities and outings. What about the money? Those places aren't cheap. She has her teacher's pension and whatever she has left from the house sale. Plus, once she moves out, we can convert her room into a proper home office, and I can take on more consulting work. The numbers make sense. They were planning my future without me calculating my finances, deciding where I would live and when I would leave, and Jacob was letting it happen. I backed away silently, returning to my room where I pulled out the folder of financial documents I kept in my bedside drawer. The mortgage statement was on top. 2 years of payments over $75,000 I had contributed without their knowledge. Below that was the original down payment check. $250,000. In that moment, looking at the evidence of my generosity and their ingratitude, something shifted inside me. The hurt transformed into resolve. I had spent my life caring for others, my students, Thomas, Jacob. Perhaps it was finally time to stand up for myself. With shaking hands, I called Dorothy. Despite the early hour, she answered on the second ring. Chris, is everything okay? No, I admitted, keeping my voice low. Everything is not okay. I told her about the dinner conversation, the hushed planning session. I had overheard all of it. When I finished, there was silence on the line. I need to leave, I said finally. Today, before I lose my nerve. Come stay with me, Dorothy offered immediately. My spare room is yours for as long as you need it. I was tempted, but Dorothy lived in the same neighborhood. Too close, too awkward. Thank you, but I need some real distance to think. Can you help me research extended stay hotels? Together, we found a decent place about 20 miles away. Nothing fancy, but clean and safe, with weekly rates that wouldn't immediately drain my savings. I booked a room for 2 weeks, long enough to figure out next steps. After hanging up with Dorothy, I called the bank where the mortgage was set up. After verifying my identity, I canceled the automatic payment scheduled for the following week. The customer service representative seemed concerned. Miss Wilkins, this will likely result in a late payment for the mortgage holders. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes, I said firmly. I'm sure. Next came the difficult task of packing. I couldn't take everything, certainly not furniture or large items. I focused on clothing, personal documents, photographs, and Thomas's watch. 2 suitcases and a tote bag would have to suffice. Each item I packed felt like a step toward freedom, yet also a painful reminder of another displacement, another loss. I touched Thomas's photograph gently before wrapping it in a sweater for protection. Give me strength, I whispered. At my desk, I wrote a brief note, keeping it dignified despite the storm of emotions inside me. Jacob and Amanda, I've decided to find my own place to live. It's clear that my presence here has become a burden rather than a help. I've taken only my personal belongings and will arrange to collect the larger items once I'm settled. Love, Mom. I was sealing the envelope when I heard the front door open and Lucy's voice calling out. She wasn't supposed to be home from school for hours. I quickly hid the packed bags in the closet and went to greet her. Grandma. She launched herself at me, wrapping small arms around my waist. I didn't feel good at school, so Daddy picked me up. Jacob appeared in the doorway looking concerned. Low-grade fever. School nurse said it might be that bug going around. I felt Lucy's forehead automatically, the gesture of countless mothers and grandmothers before me. She was warm, but not alarmingly so. I'll make you some soup and set you up with a movie, I offered already, heading toward the kitchen. Actually, Mom, I can handle it, Jacob said. I took the rest of the day off. Why don't you take a break? You look tired. I must have looked more than tired if Jacob had noticed. My sleepless night and emotional morning had taken a toll. I'll just get her settled first. I insisted, unwilling to give up what might be my last few hours with my granddaughter. Lucy curled up on the couch under her favorite blanket while I heated chicken noodle soup. Jacob hovered nearby, checking his phone and glancing at me occasionally with an unreadable expression. Grandma, will you read me a story? Lucy asked after finishing half her soup. Of course, sweetheart. Which one would you like? She selected a book about a lonely lighthouse keeper who befriends sea creatures, one we had read together many times. I settled beside her on the couch, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, memorizing the weight of her small body against mine. Jacob watched us for a moment before slipping away to his home office. I heard him on the phone, probably checking in with work. Once Lucy was dozing, the book forgotten on her lap, I gently extricated myself and returned to my room to finish packing. I had just zipped the second suitcase when Lucy appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Grandma, why do you have suitcases out? My heart sank. I hadn't wanted her to see this, hadn't prepared what to say. Well, sweetheart, Grandma is going to take a little vacation. Her eyes widened. Can I come? Not this time, honey. This is a grown-up trip. But who will read me stories? Mommy always says she's too tired, and Daddy doesn't do the voices right. Tears threatened again, but I blinked them back. I'll still see you, Lucy. I promise. We can have special visits, just the two of us. When are you coming back? The innocent question nearly broke me. I'm not sure yet, but I'm not going far. Is it because Mommy was mean at dinner? She shouldn't have been mean. Children notice everything, understand more than we give them credit for. It's complicated, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups need their own space. Like when I go to Bethany's house to play because you and Mommy need quiet time. Something like that. I heard the front door open and Amanda's voice called out. She wasn't supposed to be home until evening. Nothing was going according to plan. Jacob, why is your car here? Is everything okay? I quickly whispered to Lucy. Grandma needs to finish packing now. We'll talk more later, okay? But it was too late. Amanda appeared behind Lucy, taking in the suitcases with narrowed eyes. What's going on? Grandma's going on vacation, Lucy announced before I could speak. Amanda's expression shifted from confusion to understanding, to calculation in seconds. I see. When were you planning to mention this? Christiana. I was going to leave a note, I said, gesturing to the envelope on the desk. How convenient. Her tone was acid. Lucy, go find Daddy. I need to talk to Grandma. But. Now, Lucy. Once Lucy had reluctantly departed, Amanda closed the door behind her. So, you're running away because I brought up some financial realities. That's mature. I continued folding a sweater, refusing to be baited. I'm not running away. I'm recognizing when I'm not wanted and removing myself from an uncomfortable situation. And where exactly are you planning to go? I've made arrangements. Amanda crossed her arms. With your teacher's pension, good luck finding anything decent in this housing market. I said nothing, just continued packing methodically. My silence seemed to unnerve her more than any response would have. Jacob will be upset, she tried next. And Lucy will be devastated. I'm sure you'll find a way to manage, I replied evenly. After all, I'm just taking up valuable space here. Jacob knocked and entered without waiting for a response. Mom, what's going on? Lucy says you're leaving. I looked at my son, really looked at him for the first time in months. The dark circles under his eyes, the slumped shoulders, the worry lines that hadn't been there when Thomas was alive. He looked exhausted and unhappy in his own home. Yes, Jacob. I'm leaving today. But why? Where will you go? I've booked a hotel while I look for something permanent. A hotel, Mom, that's ridiculous. Whatever's wrong, we can work it out. I zipped the tote bag closed. There's nothing to work out. Amanda made her feelings very clear last night, and I heard you both this morning discussing senior living options for me. I'm simply saving you the trouble of that conversation. Jacob paled. You heard that, Mom. We were just exploring options, not making decisions. The decision has been made, Jacob, just not by you. I picked up the handles of both suitcases. I've called a car service. It should be here any minute. Amanda's phone pinged. She checked it and her expression darkened further. The bank just sent an alert about the mortgage payment. It says the automatic transfer was canceled. Do you know anything about that? And there it was, The moment of truth. Jacob looked confused, glancing between Amanda and me. What automatic transfer? I set down the suitcases and straightened my shoulders, channeling the authority I had wielded in classrooms for 4 decades. I've been paying the mortgage on this house since you moved in. $3,200 every month for 2 years on top of the down payment. Jacob's jaw literally dropped. What, that's not possible. Check the bank records, I told him calmly. Ask them who set up the payments. Amanda's face had gone from flushed to paper white. Why would you do that without telling us? Because I wanted to help without hurting Jacob's pride. I wanted you both to have security and stability to build a good life for Lucy. I never expected gratitude, but I certainly didn't expect to be treated like an unwelcome burden in a home I've largely paid for. The doorbell rang, my ride arriving with perfect timing. I picked up my bags again. I'll be in touch about the rest of my belongings, I said, moving toward the door. Please let Lucy know I'll call her soon. Jacob seemed rooted to the spot, still processing the revelation. Amanda looked like she might be sick. Neither moved to stop me as I walked down the hallway. Lucy came running from the living room. Grandma, are you leaving now? I set down the bags to give her a proper hug. Yes, sweetheart. But I'll see you very soon, I promise. Pinky promise. She held out her tiny finger solemnly. Pinky promise. I confirmed, linking my finger with hers. Be good for your parents, okay? The driver helped load my bags into the car. As we pulled away, I didn't look back at the house. Instead, I watched Lucy waving frantically from the front door, Jacob standing behind her looking shell-shocked, and Amanda nowhere to be seen. The farther we drove, the lighter I felt, as if each mile created space for me to breathe again. By the time we reached the hotel, I was exhausted but calmer than I had been in months. The room was basic but clean, with a small kitchenette and decent-sized bathroom. I unpacked the essentials, placed Thomas's picture on the nightstand, and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time since Thomas died, I was truly on my own. The thought was terrifying but also strangely liberating. I had stood up for myself. Whatever came next, I would face it with the same strength. The calls started within 2 hours of my departure. Jacob first, then Amanda, then Jacob again. I let them all go to voicemail, not ready to have those conversations yet. After the 5th call in succession, I turned off my phone entirely and took a long, hot shower, allowing myself to cry properly for the first time since that awful dinner. Afterward, I sent Jacob a single text: I'm safe. Need time to think. Ask Amanda about contributions. Then I turned the phone off again and ordered room service, suddenly ravenous, after barely eating for 24 hours. The next morning, I met Dorothy at a cafe halfway between her house and my hotel. She hugged me fiercely when I arrived. You actually did it, she said with admiration. I wasn't sure you would. Neither was I admitted. But once I started packing, it felt like the only right choice. Over coffee and pastries, I told her everything, including the mortgage revelation and my abrupt departure. I wish I could have seen their faces, Dorothy said with undisguised glee. Amanda, especially. It wasn't about revenge, I clarified. I just couldn't keep pretending anymore. What's your plan now? I sighed. Find an apartment, I suppose. Something small but comfortable. Near Lucy, if possible. Dorothy stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Actually, I might have a better option. My cousin Marilyn has a guest house behind her main property in Westview. It's charming, 1-bedroom with a garden. She's been using it for storage since her son moved out, but she mentioned wanting to rent it out. Westview is a lovely area, I said, interest piqued, but probably expensive. Marilyn owes me a few favors, Dorothy winked. And she'd love having a former teacher as a tenant. Let me make a call. By the end of our coffee date, Dorothy had arranged for us to see the guest house that afternoon. It was even more charming than described: a converted carriage house with high ceilings, hardwood floors, and French doors opening onto a small private garden. The rent Marilyn suggested was well below market value, and when I tried to negotiate up, she waved me off. Dorothy's friends are my friends, she insisted. And I'd rather have someone trustworthy than a few extra dollars. I signed a 6-month lease on the spot and arranged to move in the following week. Dorothy helped me shop for essential furniture, a bed couch, dining table, and dresser. All simple but good quality. I was careful with money, knowing I needed to establish a new budget without the mortgage payments. 5 days after I left, Jacob showed up at Dorothy's house looking for me. I wasn't there, but she called to warn me. "He seems pretty upset," she reported. "Said he's been trying to reach you for days." I had checked my messages but hadn't felt ready to respond. There were 23 voicemails, most from Jacob, a few from Amanda, and surprisingly, 3 from Amanda's mother, Linda, whom I had always gotten along with reasonably well. "Did you tell him where I'm staying?" "Of course not." Dorothy sounded offended at the suggestion. "But I did tell him you're safe and have found a permanent place. He wants to see you." I agreed to meet Jacob at a neutral location, a park where we had taken Lucy many times. He was already waiting when I arrived, pacing near the duck pond. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. "Mom," he rushed toward me. "Why haven't you been answering my calls? I've been worried sick." "I needed space," I said simply, "and time to think. You could have let me know you were okay. I texted you the first day." He ran a hand through his hair. "One text in 5 days, I thought something might have happened to you." "I'm fine, Jacob. Better than I've been in a long time, actually." We sat on a bench overlooking the water. For a while, neither of us spoke. "Why didn't you tell me about the mortgage?" he finally asked, voice small. "I wanted to help without making you feel like you needed help. You've always been sensitive about money ever since you were young. So you just secretly paid thousands of dollars every month. For 2 years. When he put it that way, it did sound absurd. It seemed like the right thing at the time. And now you've just canceled it without warning. The bank called about the missed payment. We don't have $3,200 lying around, Mom." I turned to look at him directly. "That's not my problem anymore, Jacob. Amanda made it very clear that my contributions weren't enough to justify my presence. Now you both can figure out what's enough." He flinched as his own wife's words were thrown back at him. "She didn't mean it like that." "Yes, she did. And you let her say it. You let her plan to ship me off to a senior living facility while I was supposedly asleep. It wasn't like that he protested weakly. It was exactly like that. I heard you both." Jacob's shoulders slumped. "I don't know what to do, Mom. Amanda's furious about the mortgage. She says you deceived us, that you made us dependent on you deliberately." I laughed, a short, harsh sound. "That's rich coming from her. Ask her who's been deceiving whom." "What do you mean?" "I found her going through my financial statements, Jacob. Multiple times. She knew exactly what I had. She was planning how to use it." His face crumpled. "Our marriage is falling apart. She barely speaks to me except to blame me for not knowing about the mortgage. Lucy keeps asking when you're coming home. Everything's a mess." Part of me wanted to comfort him, to say I'd come back and fix everything. But that part was getting smaller every day. "I'm sorry you're going through this, truly. But I can't come back." "Where are you staying? At least tell me that." "I'm moving into a small house in Westview next week. It's lovely with a garden." "Westview, that's 40 minutes away. How will you see Lucy?" "We'll work something out. Regular visits, maybe weekends sometimes." His expression darkened. "Amanda won't make that easy." "That would be a mistake on her part," I said evenly. "I've consulted an attorney about grandparent visitation rights just in case." It was a bluff. I hadn't spoken to a lawyer, but Jacob didn't need to know that. "It's come to that, legal threats." "I hope not. But I won't be cut off from Lucy because Amanda is angry about losing her cash cow." Jacob winced at the harsh description, but didn't deny it. We talked a while longer, mostly about practical matters, retrieving the rest of my belongings arrangements for seeing Lucy financial untangling. By the end, things were civil but distant, a formality between us that had never existed before. As predicted, Amanda was not cooperative about Lucy. When I called to arrange a visit, she claimed Lucy was too busy with activities. When I suggested another day, there was another excuse. This went on for 2 weeks until Lucy herself called me from Jacob's phone. "Grandma, when are you coming to see me? Mommy says you're too busy, but I miss you." My heart broke at the confusion in her voice. "I miss you too, sweetheart. I'm never too busy for you. How about I pick you up from school on Friday, and we can get ice cream?" "Yes, please." I heard Amanda in the background, then Lucy saying, "It's Grandma, she's going to take me for ice cream on Friday." There was muffled conversation, then Jacob came on the line. "Mom, Friday works. I'll let the school know you're authorized for pickup." Amanda wasn't happy, but with both Jacob and Lucy against her, she had little choice. That Friday was the first of what became regular visits. I would pick Lucy up after school, we would do something fun, and then I would drop her at home before dinner. Sometimes Jacob would join us, increasingly comfortable in my presence again, though things were still strained. News travels fast in small communities. Neighbors and friends soon learned of my departure and the circumstances surrounding it. Most people took my side, especially after hearing about the mortgage situation. Amanda found herself excluded from some social circles, no longer invited to certain gatherings. Her response was a formal letter delivered by certified mail demanding repayment of loans made to me during my stay loans that had never existed. My bank statements proved as much, and a strongly worded response from Dorothy's son-in-law, who actually was an attorney, put an end to that approach. Meanwhile, I was building a new life in Westview. The guest house quickly became home, filled with new furniture and a few treasured items from my previous life. I planted flowers in the garden, hung bird feeders, and set up a special corner for when Lucy visited with books, art supplies, and games. Marilyn became a friend, as well as landlord, introducing me to her book club and walking group. Through these connections, I learned about a volunteer position at the community center reading to children and helping with their homework program. By the 3rd month in my new home, I had a busy schedule and growing social circle. Jacob visited alone one Sunday afternoon, looking more worn than ever. He accepted the tea I offered and sat heavily on my new couch. "Amanda and I are taking a break," he announced without preamble. "I'm staying at Mark's place for now." Mark was his college friend who had never married. I had always liked him. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it despite everything. "What happened?" "Everything. The money issues, her treatment of you, her controlling behavior with Lucy. It's been building for years, I guess, but I couldn't see it clearly until you left. Have you considered counseling?" He nodded. "I suggested it." She refused. We talked for hours that day, really talked in a way we hadn't since he was a teenager. About his marriage, his career frustrations, his fears about failing as a father and husband. About Thomas, and grief, and moving forward. When he finally left, something had shifted between us, a new understanding, a path toward healing. The real surprise came 2 weeks later when Amanda requested to meet me for coffee. She looked different, humbler, less polished, with dark circles under her eyes suggesting sleepless nights. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she began stiffly. "I was curious what you wanted to say," I replied truthfully. She stared into her coffee cup. "I've been seeing a therapist. She suggested I need to address the harm I've caused if I want any chance of saving my marriage." "Is that what you want? To save your marriage?" "I don't know anymore." Her voice broke slightly. "Everything's such a mess. Jacob's barely speaking to me. Lucy asks about you constantly. The mortgage company is threatening foreclosure." "That's not why I'm here," I told her firmly. "I'm not bailing you out financially again." "That's not what I'm asking," she said quickly. I need to understand why I behaved the way I did. My therapist thinks I felt threatened by you, by your relationship with Jacob and Lucy, by your competence. I never had a good relationship with my own mother, and somehow I transferred all that onto you." It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was more self-awareness than I had ever seen from her. "What do you want from me, Amanda?" "Nothing. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't expect forgiveness or help. I just needed you to know that I see what I did now. How wrong it was." She hesitated. "And I want to make sure you can still see Lucy regardless of what happens between Jacob and me." It wasn't everything, but it was a start. As fall turned to winter, my new life settled into comfortable rhythms. The small guest house was cozy and perfectly sized for one person, with enough room for occasional visitors but not so much space that it felt empty or lonely. I had decorated simply but warmly, creating a home that reflected my personality without the compromises required when living with others. Lucy visited regularly, delighting in what she called my fairy house. She had her own special drawer in the dresser, with spare clothes and pajamas, her favorite snacks in the pantry and books we were reading together stacked on the nightstand in the guest room. Jacob and Amanda remained separated, though neither had filed for divorce. He was back in the house for Lucy's sake, while Amanda stayed with her sister temporarily. They were attempting counseling with mixed results, according to Jacob's occasional updates. One crisp November afternoon, there was an unexpected knock at my door. Amanda stood on the porch, hands shoved deep in her coat pockets, looking uncomfortable. "May I come in?" she asked, her breath visible in the cold air. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let her enter. She looked around curiously, taking in my new space. "It's lovely," she said, sounding genuinely surprised. "Very you." "Thank you. Would you like tea?" She nodded, and I busied myself in the small kitchen, while she continued to survey the living room, pausing at photos of Lucy I had displayed on the bookshelf. Once we were seated with steaming mugs, Amanda cleared her throat nervously. "I owe you an apology," she began, clearly rehearsed. "A real one, not the half-explanation I gave before. I treated you terribly, Christiana. I was disrespectful, ungrateful, and cruel. There's no excuse for my behavior, though I've spent months in therapy trying to understand it. I'm truly sorry." The words hung between us, sincere but insufficient to erase 2 years of mistreatment. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I've lost everything that matters," she said simply. "My marriage is barely hanging on. Lucy asks for you more than she asks for me. The house is in foreclosure proceedings. My perfect life is in shambles, and I did it to myself." "I'm sorry about the house," I said, meaning it despite everything. "That affects Lucy, too. The bank might agree to refinance if we can make a lump sum payment, but we don't have the money. Jacob's parents can't help and mine won't." She laughed bitterly. "Not that I'm asking you to. I know better than that now." "Good," I said firmly. "Because I won't be paying your mortgage again. That arrangement is permanently over." "I understand. That's not why I came." She twisted her hands together. "Jacob and I are trying to work things out. For Lucy's sake primarily. The counselor suggested that unresolved issues with you are part of what's blocking our progress. She recommended I make amends if possible." "And is that what you want, to make amends?" Amanda looked down at her untouched tea. "I don't know what I want anymore. For so long I wanted the perfect family, the perfect house, the perfect life. When you moved in, it felt like an intrusion on that vision. Now I realize my perfect life was built on your generosity, which I repaid with resentment." We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering painful ground, but with a new honesty neither of us had managed before. Amanda spoke about her difficult relationship with her own mother, her insecurities about Jacob's close bond with me, her fear that Lucy loved me more than her. I shared my grief over Thomas, my fear of being alone, my guilt at potentially enabling Jacob's financial dependence. By the time she left, nothing was resolved, but something had shifted. There was a fragile understanding between us, tenuous but real. December brought preparations for the first Christmas since my departure. Lucy was torn about the holiday arrangements, wanting to be with both her parents and me. After much discussion, we agreed on a compromise: Christmas Eve at my house, Christmas morning at theirs, and Christmas dinner, all together at a neutral restaurant. I decorated my little home with care, setting up a small tree that Lucy helped adorn with handmade ornaments. I baked cookies using Thomas's mother's recipes, filling the house with familiar scents that brought bittersweet memories. On Christmas Eve morning, Jacob arrived alone with a box of ornaments from their house. "These were always your favorites," he explained, handing me the carefully packed decorations. "We thought they should be here with you." We didn't escape my notice. "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "That was thoughtful." Jacob lingered, looking around the living room. "You've made this place nice, Mom. It suits you." "I like it here," I agreed. "It's peaceful." He helped me hang the ornaments, including several Lucy had made as a toddler that I had always cherished. As we worked, he seemed to be gathering courage to say something. "Amanda and I are separating again," he finally announced. "Officially this time." I paused, a glass ball ornament in my hand. "I'm sorry to hear that. I thought you were working things out." "We tried. For months. But some things can't be fixed with counseling alone. We want different things, always have." He sat heavily on the couch. "Can I stay here for a while, just until I find my own place?" The request caught me off guard. "Jacob, honey, there's barely room for me here. I could sleep on the couch. It would just be temporary." I set down the ornament carefully. "No, Jacob. That wouldn't be healthy for either of us." His face fell. "I don't have anywhere else to go. Mark's place is too small, and I can't afford a decent apartment with the mortgage and all our other debts." "What about the house? If you and Amanda are separating, you'll need to sell it anyway." "It's underwater now. We owe more than it's worth after missing payments." I sighed, recognizing the pattern. Jacob in financial trouble, looking to me for rescue. It had been this way since he was in college. "I love you," I told him gently, "but I can't fix this for you. You need to stand on your own feet, make your own decisions, face your own consequences." "That's cold, Mom. After everything we've been through." "It's not cold, it's necessary. For both of us. I enabled your financial dependence for years, and that wasn't healthy." He left shortly after our Christmas Eve plans suddenly uncertain. I spent the afternoon baking, trying not to worry, reminding myself that Jacob was an adult responsible for his own choices. To my surprise, they all arrived that evening as planned: Jacob, Amanda, and an excited Lucy. The adults maintained a strained politeness, while Lucy opened presents and we ate dinner. It wasn't the warm family Christmas I had imagined, but it was better than spending the holiday alone. After Lucy went to bed in the small guest room, the three of us sat awkwardly in the living room, making stilted conversation about safe topics. Finally, Amanda addressed the elephant in the room. "Jacob told me he asked to stay here, and you said no." I tensed, expecting recriminations, but she surprised me. "You made the right call," she continued. "He needs to figure this out himself." She turned to Jacob. "We both do." It was the most mature thing I had ever heard her say. Jacob looked between us, confused by our unexpected alignment. "So what am I supposed to do, live in my car?" "You could stay with your friend Mark temporarily," Amanda suggested. "Or rent a room somewhere affordable. We need to sell the house and pay off as much debt as possible before it goes to foreclosure." And then what Jacob demanded. "Start over from nothing at 39. "If necessary," I said. "Many people do it at all ages. I did it at 68. That landed harder than I intended, but it was the truth. I had rebuilt my life from scratch after decades of stability. If I could do it, so could he. The conversation continued late into the night, painful but necessary. By the time they left, tentative plans had been made to list the house, liquidate unnecessary possessions, and consult a financial advisor about debt management. None of it would be easy, but it was a start. In the following weeks, both Jacob and Amanda consulted me separately about their plans. It was strange to be acting as a sounding board for both sides of a dissolving marriage, but I maintained strict neutrality, offering support without taking sides. Their problems were theirs to solve, their future, theirs to determine. Lucy, caught in the middle, spent more time with me as her parents dealt with practical matters. She was confused and sad about the changes, but resilient in the way children often are. I created a stable, loving environment during her visits, a sanctuary from the tension at home. By February, the house was on the market. Jacob had moved into a modest apartment with basic furnishings, while Amanda stayed with her sister, looking for work in another city to be closer to her family. They had agreed to joint custody of Lucy with me, providing additional support and stability during the transition. When the house finally sold in March for less than they had paid, it was bittersweet. The place I had helped them buy, where I had lived for 2 difficult years, would belong to strangers. But the sale allowed them to pay off most of their debts and make a fresh start, painful but necessary. On the day of closing, Jacob called me with unexpected news. "The bank found additional payments on the mortgage," he said, his voice puzzled. "Going back 6 months before you moved in with us. They say it's some kind of overpayment that needs to be refunded." I smiled to myself. I had forgotten about those early payments made while Thomas was still alive. We had decided together to help Jacob and Amanda with their apartment rent, allowing them to save for a house down payment. It was our secret gift to them, another act of parental love they had never known about. "That money belongs to you and Amanda," I told him. "Split it equally and use it wisely." "But Mom, it's your money. You should have it back." "Consider it my final financial contribution to both of you. A fresh start fund with one condition." "What's that?" "You both take financial literacy courses. Learn to budget, save, invest. Break the cycle for Lucy's sake." He agreed readily, perhaps finally understanding the value of financial independence. That spring brought new beginnings for all of us. Jacob was promoted at work and taking his finances seriously for the first time. Amanda found a job in her hometown and was rebuilding her relationship with Lucy through regular visits and video calls. And I discovered a new purpose: teaching financial literacy to women at the community center, sharing the hard-won wisdom of my own experience. As summer approached, my little guest house truly became home. The garden I had planted the previous fall burst into colorful bloom, creating a peaceful retreat where I spent hours reading, writing, and simply enjoying the birdsong. Inside, every corner reflected my personality and preferences, from the arrangement of furniture to the art on the walls. My friendship with Marilyn, my landlady, deepened into genuine affection. We discovered shared interests in gardening, classic films, and volunteer work. Often we would share evening meals on her patio, talking for hours as the sun set. She introduced me to her wide circle of friends, many of them vibrant, engaged women in their 60s and 70s who had reinvented themselves after divorce or widowhood. "You know," Marilyn told me one evening as we sipped iced tea in the garden when Dorothy first called about you needing a place. I was hesitant. Renting to a friend's friend can be complicated. But you've been the perfect tenant and become a dear friend. "This place saved me," I admitted. "Not just physically, but emotionally. It gave me space to rediscover who I am without Thomas, without being just Jacob's mother or Lucy's grandmother." And that was the truth. In the shelter of this small house, I had remembered parts of myself long submerged in family obligations. I joined a writing group at the library, sharing stories from my teaching days. I took a watercolor class at the community center, producing modestly successful landscapes that now decorated my walls. I even went on a few dinner dates with a kind widower from Marilyn's church, though we ultimately decided friendship suited us better than romance. Lucy flourished, with the new arrangements adapting to splitting time between Jacob's apartment and occasional weekends with Amanda, with surprising resilience. She spent one weekend a month with me, precious time we filled with baking crafts, reading, and long walks through the neighborhood. At 7, she was becoming a thoughtful, empathetic child who asked perceptive questions about the changes in her family. "Grandma, are you happier now than when you lived with us?" she asked one Saturday morning as we kneaded bread dough together. The question caught me by surprise. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart? You smile more now, and you laugh louder. Before you used to laugh really quiet like this." She demonstrated a muffled chuckle behind her hand. "Children notice everything." "Yes, I am happier now," I told her honestly. "Sometimes people need their own space to be their best selves. Like how Daddy is nicer since he got his apartment." Exactly like that. Jacob had indeed changed significantly since taking responsibility for his own life. He had been promoted at work, was following a strict budget, and had even started cooking meals from scratch rather than relying on takeout. When he visited, which was often, he seemed more confident, more at peace. Amanda's transformation was equally remarkable, though different. After moving back to her hometown, she had reconnected with old friends, joined a hiking club, and started therapy again. When she came to visit Lucy, she made a point of having coffee with me, our conversations increasingly honest and occasionally even warm. 6 months after my departure, Jacob and Amanda finalized their divorce amicably. They worked out a custody arrangement that put Lucy's needs first, communicated civilly about parenting matters, and even occasionally had family dinners together for Lucy's benefit. It wasn't perfect, but it was healthier than the tension-filled household they had maintained for years. One Sunday in June, I hosted a small gathering in my garden. Jacob was there with his new girlfriend Petra, a sensible librarian who treated Lucy with gentle respect. Amanda had driven in for the weekend and brought her new rescue dog that Lucy adored. Dorothy and Marilyn completed our little group along with a few friends I had made through the community center. As I set a platter of fresh fruit on the table, I glanced around at this unexpected assembly of people connected to me in different ways. There was Jacob laughing at something Petra said, looking younger and more carefree than he had in years. Amanda watching Lucy play with the dog, a soft expression on her face I had rarely seen during our time living together. Dorothy and Marilyn, my stalwart supporters, through the most difficult transition of my life. Jacob caught my eye across the garden and raised his glass slightly in a private toast. Later, as guests were helping clean up, he pulled me aside. "I never properly thanked you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For leaving. It sounds strange, but your departure forced all of us to face realities we had been avoiding. Amanda and I were making each other miserable but couldn't admit it. I was financially irresponsible and dependent. She was controlling and insecure. None of it was sustainable. I didn't leave to teach you a lesson," I told him. "I left because I needed to respect myself." "I know. That was the most powerful lesson of all." He hugged me, something he had done rarely as an adult. "I'm proud of you, Mom. Dad would be too." Those words, more than anything, healed a wound I hadn't realized was still open. That evening, after everyone had gone and the dishes were washed, I sat in my garden as twilight fell. From a drawer in my desk, I took out Thomas's watch, something I still did when I needed to feel connected to him. The leather band was worn thin, the face slightly scratched, but it remained my most treasured possession. "We did good with him," I whispered to Thomas's memory. "He figured it out eventually." The path to this peaceful moment had been painful, filled with tears and difficult conversations, broken relationships and damaged pride. The hurt of Amanda's casual cruelty at that Sunday dinner still sometimes echoed in my mind. The shock of realizing my own son would not defend me still occasionally stung. But those wounds had gradually healed, leaving scars that represented not just pain but growth. In standing up for myself, I had allowed everyone involved to grow beyond toxic patterns. Jacob and Amanda freed from a marriage that brought out the worst in both of them. Lucy now raised by parents who communicated respectfully, instead of seething with resentment. And me discovering that at 68 I could build a new life filled with purpose and joy. My decision to leave had been labeled selfish by Amanda in those early angry phone calls. Perhaps it was in the best sense of the word. By valuing myself enough to demand respect, I had broken a cycle that would have continued to damage 3 generations of our family. The lessons were profound, though hard-won. That financial generosity without boundaries can become enabling. That silence in the face of disrespect only invites more of the same. That it's never too late to start over, to redefine yourself and your relationships on healthier terms. Most importantly, I learned that the strongest form of love sometimes requires stepping back, allowing loved ones to face consequences, to stumble, and find their own way forward. My instinct had always been to cushion Jacob from hardship, to sacrifice my own comfort for his. But true growth rarely comes from comfort. As stars appeared in the darkening sky, I felt profound gratitude for this unexpected chapter of my life. The small house that had become a true home. The writing group that valued my stories. The community center, where I now taught financial literacy to women in transition. The friendships, both old and new, that sustained me. And yes, even the painful journey that had brought me here. Thomas and I had planned to travel the world in our retirement. That dream died with him. But in its place, I had found a different kind of journey, just as meaningful. Learning to stand alone, to value myself, to create boundaries, to start fresh when necessary. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between keeping peace in your family and standing up for yourself? What helped you find the courage to make that decision? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to choose self-respect. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to love yourself enough to set healthy boundaries.